was talking on the phone with my brother who's stationed in Fort Bragg, and they have a 9 p.m. curfew. What on earth is a 9 p.m. curfew doing to stop the spread of a pandemic? Bars are already closed. This doesn't make any sense. This is just something for simple-minded people to express how much they did to combat the pandemic. You didn't do anything. You infringed on people's freedoms for no reason. You have to have a good reason for implementing the restrictions that people are going to implement.
Before we move on from Corona, though, and I want to obviously talk about the book, you mentioned the stimulus before, and can you just talk a little bit about what that process is like and when you suddenly see everybody on every side, although in this case, I think the most egregious examples were by the progressives, about just all the pork they stuff in there and all these things that have nothing to do with helping the economy because of coronavirus. And then it's things like, Nancy Pelosi happens to be on the board of the Kennedy Arts Center and like all of these things that we all know are terrible. And when limited government people see those things, it's like, man, if you guys can't even help us now, if you can't even do it right now, then even the little bit of the limited part starts to become really freaking irrelevant,
Yeah, as far as the process on this particular bill, and unfortunately a lot of bills, it is a closed group of leadership that's doing that, and that's for the sake of expediency. It doesn't mean people don't have a say. There's a constant conversation of and ways to get input into there. Of course, it's hard to put input into a bill if you're not really sure how the bill is being formed anyway. Our leadership does a pretty decent job of keeping us informed in a private way. So like, maybe it's conference calls or whatever it is, so that we can say, hold on, we're not in favor of this. Just like I was outspoken against, direct cash payments. I don't think that made any sense for a lot of reasons. And in the same way, progressives and some more populist conservatives were against any kind of help to big businesses at all, even if it's just loans. And so people still get their voice heard on that. But the reality is yes, a lot of this is negotiated in closed door sessions. And I'm not so sure that's the wrong way, because, you could debate it publicly on the House floor, I suppose, but where would we get and how long would that take when this is an emergency? So that's whether that's good or bad is, I think, truly up for debate. As far as the pork goes, it's frustrating. You didn't see me making a huge fuss about it, mostly because we're talking about millions of dollars when we passed a $2 trillion stimulus package. So, I try to look at everything through a lens of perspective. And also, I tried to interpret the best of intentions from the people who wanted that in there, which was these particular organizations like the Kennedy Center, they will shed jobs if we don't fund them because they make their money off of events. Now, the frustrating part for everybody was they still shed jobs.
Like many businesses 2 days later.
Like many businesses are. This isn't something that made me angry, and I especially since I just wrote a whole book about not engaging in outrage and having some perspective and looking a few layers deep into why something happened as a method to sort of temper your own emotions. It's generally hard to get me emotionally upset, and I don't understand it from either side of the aisle, frankly, when people get emotional about things. It doesn't mean they're wrong to show concern, but I wouldn't let it keep you up at night.
Yeah. All right. So just one more on this then. What else should the government be doing right now? I mean, we're all still in lockdown. Yesterday I went to my local hardware store and I saw that I could buy seeds to plant some things, which I did buy, but I know that in Michigan, you actually can't buy seeds right now. I mean, we've got a series of kind of crazy things, and I'm all for the governors and the states doing what they want. I think you mostly are as well. But there are some strange things happening. But what do you think the role of the federal government and the states should be right now? And are they basically working together pretty well?
Yeah, I think the balance is about right. I think every once in a while, even the president says kind of the wrong thing about whether he's talking about forcing a reopening or forcing a national lockdown. Neither is okay. You can't do it. That's up to the states. And in states like Michigan, where the governor is making up stupid rules, they should be held accountable. I hope voters are holding, I think it's a her, right?
Yeah, it's a her.
Deeply accountable for these completely foolish policies that are really just based in virtue signaling, not based in any actual, even 2 seconds of logical thought. It's like, what, I was talking on the phone with my brother who's stationed in Fort Bragg, and they have a 9 p.m. curfew. What on earth is a 9 p.m. curfew doing to stop the spread of a pandemic? Bars are already closed. This doesn't make any sense. This is just something for simple-minded people to express how much they did to combat the pandemic. You didn't do anything. You infringed on people's freedoms for no reason. You have to have a good reason for implementing the restrictions that people are going to implement. Okay, so what's next, to your question? What's next is we have to start having a real conversation about how to reopen the economy alongside battling and reducing the risk of the pandemic. And this looks a lot like what Harvard economists and political scientists are calling a mobilize in transition phase. I know our governor here in Texas is going to come out with his plan soon. I think the federal government is as well. I've just written an op-ed about it, and it basically looks like this. Look, we have to dispel this myth that there's a binary choice between a perpetual lockdown and just letting people die in the spread of the pandemic. Neither of these things are true. You can do both, okay? And we have to do both. This is not an option. We have to do both. And I think along 3 factors that we have to be focused on: testing capacity, which we're a little behind on, but I think we can rather quickly ramp up to the right standard. Public health capacity, meaning our hospitals, our ventilators, our PPE. I think we're getting to a much better place on that. And then public education on how to deal with it, whether that's standing 6 feet away from each other, wearing a mask to work, just making those micro changes in your life and in your business so that we can live alongside a pandemic for a period of time until there's a vaccine. That's the new normal. And it doesn't involve shutting down the economy indefinitely. This is the last thing I want to say. I get really worried when we become obsessive over the nature of the curve and the peak. Those are important data points, but they're not the data points. There's other data points, like our sense of preparedness along those 3 lines that I just mentioned. When I hear our mayor talking about how we can't open up Houston because we haven't reached the peak yet, I find that to be absurd, because if you put our numbers that we have here in Houston, which is very, very small, like very, very small, we're the 4th largest city in America, and we barely have any cases, comparatively speaking. If you put our numbers and place those in New York City right now, New York City would be celebrating and they'd open up everything. So if that can be true, then it tells you that our logic isn't correct as we think about what our goalposts are to open up the economy. And I'm encouraging leaders to think through this a little bit more deeply.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons, actually, that I'm kind of hopeful for the future when we get out of this, that some of the right ideas that I think you're writing about in this book will break forth. I mean, things like states' rights, like we're actually talking about states' rights right now for the first time in this country in, God, I don't know, maybe since Roe v. Wade. Like, we never talk about states' rights, and suddenly people are like, oh, governors are supposed to do things, and the president doesn't have ultimate authority, and a whole bunch of other things. So since the book is about American resilience in the era of outrage, one thing on American resilience related to Corona specifically, are you worried that as this has gone on, and maybe as some of the states get back to work and some take longer, and it looks like New York will take a really long time, but just the longer that we're in our houses, the longer that the economy is shut, the longer that we kind of sputter along, that thing, the American resilience that you write about here, that's the special thing we have in America that every other country wishes they had. But the more that we sort of just let government do things and, oh, the peak didn't happen yet, we'll stay in our house for another month, like that we'd actually start forgetting what that spirit of American resilience is. That's what I see a lot of silver linings here, as I just mentioned, but that's the thing I'm worried about, that over time, we would just start accepting more and more rules and accepting that more and more experts know what to do when perhaps they don't. And then, the bad actors in government that just sort of want to control all of us.
Yeah, those are definitely reasonable fears. I think, unfortunately, the reality is we shifted towards that acceptance a long time ago, and I'm actually seeing. I think this entire experience might bring us back to normalcy to an extent, where we do see that experts don't have all the answers. Their data is important. Their opinions are important, but it takes a leader to sift through all of those opinions and then make a bold decision and then get people to rally behind that decision and mobilize.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.